I am the son and the grandson of alcoholics. I watched those people die from alcohol, and I watched how this terrible disease cascades down the generations, causing chaos, pain and distress in its wake. In the all-party group of children of alcoholics, which I co-chair, we've come together because we know that we have to try and break the silence in order to break the cycle of this disease cascading down any more generations to come. But we know that we too have to normalise the conversation, and that means we have to help organise the conversation, and that's why for us this debate today is so important. There are so many people and there are so many members of this House who are still bound in fear with stigma and shame that stops them speaking out. I've now lost count, Madam Deputy Speaker, of the number of our colleagues in here who have approached me in the lobbies and corridors to say, I too am the child of an alcoholic, but for whatever reason, they are not able to speak out. I almost did not speak myself. It was only through the spiritual guidance of Father Jerry, God rest his soul, at St Chad's Cathedral in Birmingham, who helped show me that if by speaking out I could effect change, then I was doing the right thing. In fact, what I would be doing is honouring the boy that became the man that became my dad. My father was the child of an alcoholic, and he had no help available to him. So I hope that this debate does encourage more of us in this place to speak out and talk publicly about the things that they have said to me in the lobbies and the corridors, because we have a wrong to right, and that wrong is that we have no strategy for tackling alcohol harm. Now, my work on this, Madam Deputy Speaker, goes back to 2015 and that election of that year. David Cameron, the Prime Minister at the time, was busy touring the country, waving my famous leaving note at the Treasury. It was something that caused me immense public shame. But what I could not talk about at the time was the intense private shame that I was going through, nursing my father in the final days of his life at Princess Alexandria Hospital in Harlow. He died on the morning of St Joseph's Day, and after his death and after that election, I fell to pieces. It was only through getting in touch with the National Association of Children of Alcoholics that I discovered that I was not alone. I grew up knowing all of the feelings that every child of an alcoholic becomes all too familiar with. Trying to make yourself invisible, to disappear from the shame of some terrible public incident, the chronic insecurity, the codependency of supporting others, in my case my mother, from the age of 8, the occasional bouts of violence, luckily in my case, occasional, the hospital visits, the trouble with ambulances, the pervasive sense of guilt. Am I doing enough? Is my father okay? Is he eating? Is he starving? Is he on the floor somewhere? The drive for perfection, the striving to please someone who doesn't really seem to care. Not long after I got into the Cabinet, Madam Deputy Speaker, it was a moment of immense pride for me, and I wanted to show my dad how proud he should have been of the work that I had put in. He came to our office at the Cabinet Office. It's a grand place. He was too drunk to stand. It was utterly humiliating, and we had to bundle him out as fast as possible. I came to see that nothing I could do would ever be good enough, and nothing that I could do could stop him drinking. Every child of an alcoholic can tell you scores of stories just like mine. Those who helped me process trauma taught me that you have to build an integrated picture of the past, the good and the bad, the light and the dark. But for children of alcoholics, the pieces of the puzzle that you try and put together are so sharp, they cut you and you bleed. That's why support like the National Association of Children of Alcoholics is life-changing. It's not just a helpline, it is literally a lifeline. That is why we have to do better, Madam Deputy Speaker, in putting in place a strategy to combat the harm of alcohol. I'm not sure I would be here without the help of Nacoa, and that's why I say today a profound thank you to Hilary Henriques and her team, to Piers, to Josh Connolly, to their amazing patrons, to Callum Best, to Tony Adams, Camilla Tominey, to David Cordwell, to Sophie Kay, to so many others. And I speak for all of us involved in our movement when I say a profound thanks to Her Royal Highness Princess Catherine for her leadership in supporting Forward Trust and the Action on Addiction Alliance, of which Nacoa is so proud to be a part. My father was an inspiration to me. He was brilliant, he was charismatic, he was a fighter for love and a fighter for decency. But he was in the grips of an addiction for which there was no help. And what was true for him is now true of thousands of children today. What is so appalling is that 1 in 5 children in this country are in this predicament. They are children of parents who drink too much. Over 60% of care applications involve the misuse of alcohol or drugs. Parental alcohol misuse accounts for nearly 40% of cases where a child is killed or seriously injured. Children of alcoholics are more likely to become addicted to alcohol, to develop eating disorders, and to take their own lives. That is why we need a strategy to combat the harm of alcohol. When we started our work in 2016, we discovered that not one local authority had a strategy for children of alcoholics. In our last survey, that had gone up to half, but that means half don't have those strategies in place. Over 90% were cutting budgets for drug and alcohol treatment, despite some having rising admissions for alcohol A&E, in alcohol A&E cases. Half of councils saw referrals for alcohol treatment going down, not up. Yet we still do not have a strategy for alcohol harm. The points my honourable friend wanted to make today is that almost 3 people per hour now die of alcohol-related causes. Alcohol-related harms now cost us £27 billion a year. People from the most deprived communities are 60% more likely to die than those in richer communities. Alcohol-specific deaths have soared by over 20% over the course of lockdown. 40% of crime is linked to alcohol, yet we still do not have a strategy to combat alcohol-related harm. To help ministers, children of alcoholics across our country united to draw up our first manifesto for change. A very simple set of 10 messages therein. A beautiful introduction from His Grace the Archbishop of Canterbury himself, the child of an alcoholic. We want to make sure there's a strategy for children of alcoholics. We want properly funded local support. We want better support for families. We want better education and awareness for children. We want a plea for the government to help lead a change of public attitudes. We want better education and training for those who work with children. We want minimum alcohol unit pricing. We want to curtail the promotion of advertising on alcohol, and we want the government to take responsibility for reducing rates of alcoholism. We want a strategy for reducing the harm of alcohol. My honourable friend, the member for Liverpool Walton, wanted to highlight the points made about minimum alcohol pricing. The points that he would have made, Madam Deputy Speaker, if he were here, is that in some ciders now a unit of alcohol costs just 19 pence. That means you can buy the recommended weekly maximum of 14 units for £2.68, less than the price of a cup of coffee. In Scotland and in Wales, there is now minimum unit pricing, which is working, which is driving down addiction rates, and which the government should learn from. Equally, alcohol advertising does now need to be curtailed. The final points, Madam Deputy Speaker, really that I wanted to make is that we thought under the Right Honourable Member for South West Surrey that we were making progress. There was a funding for the Nacoa helpline put in place. There were funding for pilots put in place. Inexplicably, at a time of surging alcohol misuse, the funding for those programmes has stopped. We assume that this is an error, and we look forward to meeting the Secretary of State to talk about reinstalling that funding. Madam Deputy Speaker, we know that we couldn't change things for our parents, but we're damn well going to change things for our children. And that means campaigning until we get a strategy in place to tackle the harm from alcohol.